Alright, I'm the King's Kid and I got a video for you. Possible conspiracy theory of mine that I find that might be a little interesting for you. Especially with how things are going on in the world. But if it's proven to be true, I'm pretty sure it'll be a really interesting time in the world, even as it is right now. If I had to give it a title, the name of this is, and I apologize for looking down because I have my notes down, it's going to try to keep this around about 30 minutes. Or a little less than 30 minutes if at all possible. But we shall see. But some of the things, the title would be China, global warming, and the coronavirus. How people may have used science to betray humanity. Or at least the U.S. And actually maybe a lot of other people on the planet too. Countries. If I had to start off, I would say the greatest trick the devil ever played or pulled was to convince the world he didn't exist. It's a line borrowed from Charles Baudelaire, something like that, and stated in one of my favorite movies called The Usual Suspects. Pretty good movie. And if this is true, science has been the devil's pawn in convincing the people that it is true. I'll talk about my perceptions with science, global warming, also how I believe at least my theory of what a possible situations going on with China, or at least maybe what they're trying to do. Hopefully not, but based on what I've seen and some of the things that I know personally about science and global warming, and I would hope not, but it's pretty interesting. So, some of the issues I have with science is that science does not always provide all the facts. Now, I like science. I think science is very important for the world. But I don't like situations where they don't tell us everything. And I'm not saying they got to tell us all the details. But, for instance, if you have certain tests, like carbon dating, it says the world is millions of years old. Okay? My question is, how did you come up with that specific means of testing? I'm sure there were other means of testing. And if they are and they gave you a different result, let's just say they said the earth was thousands of years old instead of millions of years old, I would want to know that information. I would want to know how many tests said that and how many tests said that the earth was millions of years old. But I don't see that necessarily happening. But I do see things that are more point toward giving science the edge over all knowledge on the planet, and I have a problem with that. Let's see. Science often presents opinions as absolute facts. I don't particularly care for that. If you have a theory, it should be stated as a theory, which is something that you may think is right. You're pretty sure it's right. However, it's not guaranteed as being a law that every time you see this in nature that this will happen. And so I don't think we should present theories as total fact. And if they are, they should just be considered laws. Let's see. Sometimes I think science may water down facts in order to gain notoriety. I hear a lot of times where science will broadcast to the world that, oh, we found this, which is cool, don't get me wrong. But if you find a situation where it is wrong, science should put it on the same page, front page, that they said was right, and say, no, we apologize, this is wrong, but this is what we learned from it. Or if you're just wrong, you just say you're wrong, okay? But that should be something, that integrity in science should be something that's upheld throughout science. It should not be, we should not be, you shouldn't be downplaying other scientists and other findings just to make your finding the supreme finding and the ultimate truth. Because there are a lot of times where I've seen in science to where we found things just by accident. And if that's the case, then there's no, even bad knowledge should be considered knowledge, because it's still something you know that you didn't know before. And that said, I believe science has come a sort of an international dictatorship which demands that all people, sexual orientation, religions, countries, etc., listen and obey, even if they're wrong. And then there's almost a legal requirement to follow it. It can almost seem like go to jail just for not doing what the law says. In some cases, I can kind of understand that, but if we're going to be putting all of our trust in you for that type situation, we need to have our trust well placed. And we should be able to question it if we need to. Basically, the coronavirus update or situation proves a statement to where pretty much everybody in a free country is being told to stay in their home. When we go to the doctor, if the doctor says something, we basically take it as law. Sometimes that's been good, sometimes that's been bad in the past, sometimes it's even been negligent in the past, just to further science, you know. That leads me up to global warming. Global warming, in my opinion, I first of all don't believe we have enough information to justify it. Second of all, if we can prove global warming is true, I shouldn't have a percentage of rainfall in the forecast. You should be able to tell America or whoever, anybody in the world, hey, at 2:35 p.m. and 23 seconds, we're going to get approximately 5 million cubic inches of water across this area in this state, and for however how long. Okay? But that information, you should be able to tell us a whole lot more information if you want to be able to tell us that global warming is real, for one. But then again, my personal feelings about it, as I say, I believe that global warming is a thing. Alright, I'll say that. The questionable part about it is it a harmful thing? Because if you fart, you just warmed up your environment. If a bunch of cows fart, they just basically warmed up their environment. Is it harmful to the environment? I don't know. CO2 is supposedly harmful, right? Or methane, that's probably harmful too. But just because we emit it doesn't necessarily mean it's bad, or bad in the way you think it is. In fact, it could actually be helpful if we really think about it in some terms. But I think you should consider solar, what you call those things? Solar flares from the sun. It could be considering where the sun is, or the earth is in relation to the sun. When we have volcanic eruptions, alright, people say, oh my God, the oceans are rising. It's like, really? Okay. You've never seen like National Geographic Channel where you see a city found underwater? I mean, that's been a thing before we even had a bunch of CO2 emissions from cars and stuff like that. If you look around, look on the internet, look on National Geographic, I'm sure you'll find some evidence of a ancient city or medieval city or whatever that is underwater. And if it's underwater for them, I mean, it's only natural to know that, okay, there's a possibility that, water will cover some other stuff. Then, of course, if you believe in the Bible, at one point in time, water was all over the world. It was called the Great Flood. Okay, if that's the case, where did that water go? If it's frozen, okay, where is it going to go after it melts? So back to where it was. But that's, another issue, another conversation. All right. Now, the bigger thing you should probably ask yourself, or I think we should ask ourselves, is who benefits from global warming? That's the big one. Because if you're really, really, really concerned about global warming, should you really benefit from it a lot? Or should the benefit more be, oh, this is something we had happen, this is something we want to prevent, let's do something to try to help that out. Case in point, if you know that people are hungry, and this is a big thing the church does, the church will sacrifice or give of itself and other people as well to people who need food. They don't ask for anything in return, but they just give it because they know it's going to help somebody out. Is that the same thing that's going to happen with this thing with global warming? Okay. My first thought, if anybody who's set to, and I think based on the Paris Agreement, what they're trying to do is they're trying to make everybody, by law, transition to some type of electrical vehicle. Who I think is going to benefit? First, I don't think you should make any law, anything that's required by law that you have to have, that you have to buy. I think there's something wrong with that. If I have to buy air to breathe it, I think there's something wrong with that. And it seems like this global warming thing is along that line. I haven't seen it for sure, but that's just my prediction, if this thing is even true. Whoever benefits, I believe, is questionable, but I would ask the oil companies what they think about it. I mean, because if we go from electric to oil, from oil to electric, that's going to be really, really detrimental for them, not to mention the countries that actually produce oil. But I haven't really heard too many oil companies saying it. I haven't looked it up just yet. But I would think that they'd be like yelling from the mountaintops, hey, no, we don't want to do it. But I have yet to hear that just yet. The only way I can see them being okay with it is if they already have securities or technologies or purchase technologies that will actually keep them in their financial position as making money. I mean, because if you know you're going to transition from one economic resource to another, the best thing you can do is get in front of it, buy it, and that way you can transition and maintain your power, influence, whatever you want to call it. But I haven't seen them do that just yet, but we shall see. The only other people I could see benefiting from it would be possibly the people who actually build batteries. If you ever have a company that builds batteries, whoa, you're going to be really, really set if we get into a situation where the world makes it outlaws gasoline and diesel engines and make electric cars or whatever the wave of the future. They're going to benefit. And then anybody who's rich, who's already invested, is going to benefit it. But then the countries that mine the natural resources to build the batteries will benefit. That should be interesting. So I did a little bit of research on that, and I found that some of the core materials, or one of the core materials for actually building the battery, is heavy metal cobalt. It's the key ingredient in lithium-ion batteries. It's often produced as a byproduct of copper and nickel mining. So, That's where I would look. The funny thing is that they are actually looking for a alternate location or alternate natural resource for heavy metal cobalt. The interesting thing about that is that China appears to be the next best location for it. So that actually puts China up as far as being a beneficiary of global warming and transition to electric car batteries and whatever else we do to support all that stuff. I did find one news story that supported that. I thought that was kind of interesting. If this is the case, then it appears to be a means of transferring the balanced power to China, because you will actually take the power from car production power from the oil making companies, and you'd actually turn it over to China. And from what I understand, they're actually already doing a lot of electric cars and stuff like that. Interesting, I should say. I even found a story about a car maker or electric car maker in China, and they're the largest electrical car manufacturer in China. It's called BYD, Build Your Dreams. Cool name. Like that. Kind of interesting the reason why they call it that, but that's part of my theory. Let's see. China, going back to global warming, is already stated to be a global leader in climate change. That kind of concerns me, considering that if we go to electric cars, China already has technology. They already have the source for it potentially, and they're considered a leader, so that just gives them automatic, respect in that regard. And because they're considered to be like a revolutionary in climate change, I really think it's a ploy to try to take over the world economy, and specifically to bankrupt America. Because if you take the ability to produce oil, gasoline, as a part of countries' actual ability to build wealth, to have their presence, and then knowing the technologies are in China, it's really going to, in my opinion, flip it and give China the economic power legally, because the Paris Agreement is going to legally require people to actually cut their emissions and stuff like that. And I'm pretty sure the ultimate goal is to get rid of gasoline in car, period, which is going to destroy a lot of economies. Depending on how they do it. I'm sure you could do it in a way that wouldn't, but I don't think that's their plan. At least we shall see. So, another issue is that as Americans, our country already has a big debt with China. Now, if they do this thing to where we have to completely convert, like we probably have more cars than anybody on the planet, I would imagine. So if we as Americans have to get rid of our gasoline, diesel cars, vehicles, and convert them over electric, that's going to be a huge issue for us as individuals. Because if you have to buy an electric car or get your car converted to electric legally, or face penalty or some type of whatever else they could probably think of, and that's really messed up. That's really messed up. Kind of like paying for air. But on the same token as that, the government will most likely probably have to give people subsidies to help them purchase cars, possibly. That will require individuals to take out bank loans, which puts people further in debt. And right now, I think one of the issues that even car makers have, and probably a benefit for them, is that because cars are getting so expensive, even in America, now people are trying to find used cars all over the place. Me personally, I like just buying a car, paying it off because I think they cost too much anyway. But what will force a person like me to actually get a new car? A legal requirement based on climate change, global warming, and then a legal mandate for every country to cut their emissions, or at some point probably just get rid of them altogether. And based on that, it kind of makes me think that there could be some type of conspiracy in the U.S. or other countries to actually create a new economic boom, and going to electric cars would probably do it. I could see that happen. If I was a business person, that would be something I would do. If I was a shady business person, I would say, based on the information I have right now. Let's see here. Also, I think part of the issue with a lot of the bickering and stuff we actually have in our country, with crazy stuff. We got racism coming up, we got sexism, we got LGBTQ community issues coming up, Democrats fighting against Republicans, left against the right, liberals. We have all this stuff going up, and then we have this thing about climate change that's happening right in the middle of it. Now, it sounds good, but I'm not so sure. But if I wanted to actually cloud the sky, so to speak, and put some little bit of light there that people will go toward, doing all this crazy confusion, bickering, and then introducing something that looks good in the midst of it, I think that's pretty shady, and that probably make people go for it without really even thinking about what it is or the implementations of it, which is part of the reason why I want to make this video. Another issue is that I think it further, and based on what President Trump did, it further allows the world to demonize America, which is kind of interesting. But then again, if you've ever been a boss, if you've ever been a leader over anything, somebody's going to complain about you in some way, form, or fashion. I don't care where they are. If they don't complain about you, they're going to be jealous, or some other means. Interesting thing about climate change, and this is my theory, when this coronavirus thing came up, which really kind of bothered me. But looking at climate change, I was like, you know what? I could see people linking the coronavirus to climate change. You know, consequently, guess what? Coronavirus looks like it came from China. You know, whether it be coming from bats or whatever other animal and getting it transferred all the way up to humans, the source still seems and appears to be China. The first death was in China. Okay. Let's see here. And I figured it was probably going to be linked to climate change in some way, form, or fashion. But when I wrote it down, and I was like, okay, I theorized it, but then later on found a news story that basically confirmed that they're already putting the two together. So, you know, coronavirus, that was caused by climate change. Woo. That sounds very, 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 very bad. You know, because if climate change is causing diseases, That's another reason why we need to go to China and get our electric cars. You know what I'm saying? We need to ban gasoline cars. Okay? Another issue I have is they have a story about the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. I haven't read the thing myself, but an issue I have with it is that any scientist on there needs to list their name, their actual area of expertise, and let it be known to the world and be available for questioning. Personally, I think that if you're saying the world is millions of years old, but you're only looking at hundreds of years of, or even thousands of years of climate data, that seems kind of dumb. Seems kind of incomplete, if you will. If I know the world is millions of years old, I need to actually do something to see if how climate has changed over the course of a million years. If we can find proof that the world is millions of years old, then we should be able to actually find proof of weather throughout that millions of years old. Okay? My thing is probably, I think of core samples when you go to the Arctic or the North Pole or wherever. Core samples, see what the ice looks like. You can, I'm sure there might be even physical manifestations on the planet itself. Tree rings is another thing to look at, but of course, how old are trees going to be? Excuse me. But there are a lot of things we should be able to look at, probably even DNA at some point in time. You might find something in there that might say, all right, this is how the weather was during a particular time. But just be able to look at that report, and if it only covers a couple hundred years since we've actually been measuring climate and have meteorology and stuff like that, that's garbage. That is straight garbage. And you know it's straight garbage. Because there are so many things that affect this world that we don't even know about. And you want to tell me that you got to study that over a couple hundred years? No. If you're going to tell me the world is a few million years old, then you need to actually be checking for climate change over a few million years. Don't tell me about the last couple hundred years. And then on top of that, it seems like some of that stuff may have been forged, or some of the actual data may have been deleted. Can't say it myself for sure, but that's kind of like the, how do you say, the taboo part about science is that because if you're not a scientist in a lot of different areas, or specifically even climate change, you can't really say too much about it. You know what I mean? So people can shut you up, even though they could be telling you a straight up lie. How would you even know they're lying to you? You ain't got nothing. How do we know the Earth is a million years old? We're just trusting what scientists say. Okay? Some people don't believe in God because they don't see God. Well, guess what? The Big Bang, you never saw that, but you believe in it. Some people do. People never saw the Earth as millions of years old, but you trust scientists, so it's still faith. Anywhere they go. They just don't believe in God, but because they don't believe in God, that makes them right. Nah, don't.